I'm leaving you, Leo's voice crackled through the phone. I've already sold the house, so I can move in with my new girl. Good luck trying to find a place. He let out a laugh before the line went dead. Sitting in the Graven Hall Group conference room, Eleanor Vance stared at her client across the dark mahogany table. A cold feeling settled in her chest, not from heartbreak, but from a profound sense of relief. At 43 years old, Eleanor was a successful commercial real estate broker in Jersey City, New Jersey. For the past 18 years, her marriage to Leo had felt like a transaction, with her success serving as his personal ATM. All she had ever wanted was respect, a true partnership, and basic human decency. Instead, she had a husband who viewed her accomplishments as nothing more than a new opportunity for his next foolish scheme. The true injustice of it all was watching the person she had promised to love and cherish try to systematically demolish everything she had built with her own two hands. She turned to her client, Mr. Caldwell from Ironvale Robotics, and offered a composed smile. "My apologies for that brief interruption," she said. "Now, where were we on the warehouse specifications?" Even as she spoke about square footage and loading docks, her mind was rapidly making calculations. Leo had a reputation for being careless with details, especially legal ones. Eleanor had learned to protect herself after 3 major financial disasters during their marriage. The first was his gambling debts when she was 35. The second came 2 years later, a failed restaurant investment. The third, a cryptocurrency nightmare, had nearly driven them to financial ruin just last year. It was after that last mess that Eleanor had taken a quiet, decisive step without her husband's knowledge. She had refinanced their home through her business, Graven Hall Group Properties, and transferred ownership to the company. The mortgage payments were now made from her business account, and the deed was legally, permanently, and completely in her company's name. After shaking hands with Mr. Caldwell and finishing the contract review, Eleanor walked toward her car with deliberate, unhurried steps. The air was crisp on that early September afternoon. As she drove through the familiar streets toward home, her thoughts turned to the backup documents secured in her office safe. She also thought about the cease and desist letters her attorney had drafted several months ago just in case. But most of all, she pictured Leo's smug face and imagined what it would look like when he finally understood the reality of his situation. A text message from his number buzzed on her phone. "Don't bother coming home," it read. "We are already moving in. My lawyer says there is nothing you can do about it." Eleanor actually laughed out loud at the absurdity of it. Leo's lawyer, if he even had one, had clearly not done their research. Neither had Leo. In 18 years of marriage, he had never once bothered to look at their financial documents. He had never questioned how the bills got paid. He had never wondered why she had been so insistent about handling all the paperwork after his last major financial disaster. As she pulled into the driveway, she saw lights on inside the house and several unfamiliar boxes stacked by the front door. This was going to be even easier than she had ever imagined. She had always been the one in their marriage who handled all the responsibilities. While Leo dreamed big and schemed bigger, Eleanor had meticulously built a real estate empire one commission at a time. Her company, Graven Hall Group Properties, had started in a tiny office above a sandwich shop some 15 years ago. Now, they managed commercial properties all over northern New Jersey, and her personal portfolio was worth more than Leo had ever bothered to calculate. Having grown up in Newark, she had learned early on that true security came from your own efforts, not from relying on other people. Her mother had lost everything when her father had left, and Eleanor had sworn to herself she would never be that vulnerable. That was why she had always maintained separate business accounts, why she had insisted on keeping her maiden name professionally, and why she had quietly restructured their assets after Leo's previous financial disasters. Leo saw her success from a completely different perspective. To him, her achievements were a form of validation for his own importance. After all, he was married to a successful businesswoman. He loved to tell people at parties about their real estate company, about their investments, and about their financial success. He never mentioned that he had not contributed a single meaningful dollar to any of it in years. The warning signs had been there for several months. His late nights, when he claimed to be working on his latest business venture, the phone calls he took in the garage, and new clothes she had never seen him buy. But the real giveaway was how he had suddenly started questioning their financial arrangements, asking about property values and mortgage details with a casualness that was not casual at all. 2 weeks earlier, she had caught him photographing documents in her home office. When she confronted him, he had laughed it off, pretending he was just trying to understand their finances better. Eleanor had feigned belief while quietly moving all of the important paperwork to her business office and setting up additional security measures. Now, sitting in her car and staring at her own house, she finally understood what he had been planning. In his mind, he had found the perfect exit strategy: sell the house, take the money, and disappear with his new girlfriend before she could stop him. It was, in fact, quite clever, in a completely illegal and morally bankrupt way. She pulled out her phone and called her attorney, Daniel Hernandez. "Daniel, it's Eleanor," she said. "I need those contingency documents we prepared. The cease and desist papers." "What happened?" he asked. "Leo tried to sell my house to fund his escape plan." "Already sold?" "Eleanor, that's fraud." "Yes, I know. I need you to meet me at the office in 1 hour. Bring everything." She hung up and sat for a moment, watching the shadows move behind her living room curtains. Leo was inside, celebrating his so-called cleverness with whichever woman had helped him plan this elaborate betrayal. They had absolutely no idea what was coming. The pieces were falling together like a brutal puzzle, and as she reviewed the last few months in her mind, she realized Leo's secretive behavior hadn't just been about an affair, it had always been about this. This wasn't simply an affair, it was an attempt to orchestrate her complete financial ruin. He had been methodically gathering information, photographing her confidential documents, and clearly consulting with someone who had convinced him he could steal her life's work. The initial moment that had changed everything had happened about 3 weeks ago during a dinner. Leo had casually mentioned that property values in their neighborhood were likely at their peak and had wondered aloud if they should consider selling the place. She had dismissed it then as idle chatter, but she now understood he had been testing the waters, trying to see if she would give him any useful information. Then, just last week, she had come home early from a client meeting to find him hunched over her computer in the home office. The screen had gone dark the moment she walked in, and Leo had jumped up with that guilty smile she had learned to recognize over their 18 years together. "I was just checking my email," he had insisted, but her computer required a password he did not know. Unless, of course, someone had helped him crack it, someone with more technical skills who had been coaching him through this entire scheme. The true shock had come this morning when she had reviewed her business accounts and noticed some unusual activity. Someone had attempted to access their joint checking account multiple times over the past week. The attempts had failed because she had changed all the passwords after catching him at her computer, but the pattern was clear. He had been trying to drain their accounts before disappearing. Now, seeing her house filled with boxes and with people celebrating inside, she felt that familiar cold clarity that had carried her through every crisis in her business. Leo was not simply leaving her. He was actively trying to destroy her. The house sale was not about starting fresh with his new girlfriend. It was about ensuring that Eleanor had absolutely nothing left to restart with. But Leo had made one crucial mistake. He had assumed she was the same trusting woman she had been so many years ago. The woman who had let him handle important decisions while she focused on building her career. He had never bothered to learn how her business actually worked, never paid attention to the legal structures she had created to protect herself after his previous financial failures. The house he had just sold belonged to Gravenhall Group Properties LLC, not to Leo Vance, and certainly not to Eleanor Vance. It belonged to her business entity, which he had no legal connection to whatsoever. The mortgage was in her company's name. The deed was recorded under her LLC, and every single payment for the past 2 years had come from her business accounts. She had, in essence, bought her own house back after his cryptocurrency disaster, making sure he could never again gamble away their shelter. It had been a precaution she had hoped to never need, but as she sat in her driveway and heard the laughter and celebration spilling from her own windows, she realized this precaution was about to become her most effective weapon. Leo had tried to sell something that did not belong to him to someone who was about to learn a very expensive lesson about due diligence. It was time to go inside and educate them both. Eleanor took a deep breath and walked up to her own front door, her keys already in her hand. The sound of voices inside grew clearer. Leo's familiar laugh mixed with a woman's higher-pitched giggle. I think we should go with something warmer in the bedroom, the woman was saying. This beige is so dated. Whatever you want, Samantha, Leo replied. It is our house now. We can do anything we want with it. Eleanor slid her key into the lock and stepped inside. The living room was in utter chaos. Boxes were everywhere, and her personal belongings had been carelessly shoved into corners. Two people froze the moment they saw her. Leo was the first to regain his composure. Eleanor, you are not supposed to be here. I told you everything. You told me you sold the house, Eleanor interrupted, setting her purse down on the entrance table that was apparently now covered with someone else's mail. I'm curious who exactly you sold it to. The woman, Samantha, was younger than Eleanor had expected, perhaps in her early 30s, with the kind of confidence that comes from believing you have won something important. She stepped forward with a smile that did not reach her eyes. I'm Samantha, Leo's fiancée. We understand this is awkward, but the house belongs to us now. I'm sure you can find somewhere else to stay tonight. Eleanor studied them both, noticing how Leo's hand shook slightly as he lit a cigarette. He only smoked when he was nervous. Fiancé, she said. That is interesting. When exactly did you two get engaged? 3 months ago, Samantha said proudly, showing off a ring Eleanor had never seen before. Right after Leo explained how his wife was holding him back financially. The audacity was breathtaking. 3 months ago, Leo had been begging her to help him out of another investment disaster, swearing he had learned his lesson about risky ventures. Apparently, his new venture was planning to steal her house. And the sale, she continued calmly. When did that happen? Leo finally found his voice. Yesterday. The papers are signed. The money is transferred. It is done, Eleanor. You need to accept that and move on. Eleanor walked over to the kitchen counter where he had spread out some official-looking documents, real estate purchase agreements, transfer forms, and even what looked like a deed. Someone had put significant effort into creating this fiction. These are impressive, she said, flipping through the pages. Very professional-looking. Who is the buyer listed here? Sunset Properties, Samantha answered quickly. We found them through a real estate investor Leo knows. They paid cash, above market value, actually. The lies were becoming more and more elaborate by the minute. Eleanor pulled out her phone and called Daniel Hernandez while they watched. Daniel, I'm at the house now. Yes, they're here. Can you conference in the title company? I need them to confirm the ownership records for this address. Leo stepped forward, trying to grab her phone. You can't do this. The sale is final. The sale of what? Eleanor asked, dodging his reach. Daniel, yes, I will hold. Samantha was looking less confident now. Leo, what is she doing? You said she could not stop us. She can't, Leo insisted, but his voice had lost its earlier bravado. The paperwork is all legal. Oh, the paperwork might be legal, she agreed. The problem is you can't sell something you do not own. She put her phone on speaker as Daniel's voice filled the room. Eleanor, I have the title company on the line. They have confirmed that this property is owned by Graven Hall Group Properties, LLC. It has been for the past 2 years. There are no transfers, no liens, and no pending sales. The silence that followed was truly beautiful. Samantha's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, then realization, and then growing fury. Leo, what the hell is he talking about? You said you own this house. Samantha's voice was sharp with disbelief. I do own it. Leo snapped back, but his voice cracked. We're married. What is hers is mine. Actually, Eleanor said, still holding her phone with the speaker on. Daniel, would you mind explaining community property law as it applies to business entities? Daniel's voice was professionally neutral, though Eleanor could hear the satisfaction underneath. In New Jersey, assets held by a limited liability company are considered separate from personal marital property, even if one spouse owns the company. If Graven Hall Group Properties owns this house, then Mr. Vance has no legal claim to it whatsoever. Leo's face was shifting from confusion to sheer terror. That is impossible. I live here. I pay for things here. When was the last time you actually paid for anything here? Eleanor asked, her tone flat. The mortgage comes from my business account. Utilities, insurance, property taxes, all business expenses. You haven't contributed to this household in over 3 years. Samantha rounded on Leo, her face flushed with betrayal. You told me this was your house. You said your wife was just being vindictive about the divorce. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. Leo, did you forget to mention that we're not actually getting divorced? You never filed papers. You never served me with anything. You just decided to sell my house and disappear. The color drained from Leo's face as the true gravity of his situation finally hit him. He hadn't just tried to commit adultery, he had committed fraud. Real estate fraud, the kind that could lead to serious prison time. Daniel's voice cut through the tension once more. Eleanor, I've also pulled the records on this supposed sale to Sunset Properties. There is no such entity registered in New Jersey. The tax identification number on these documents belongs to a landscaping company in Pennsylvania that has been defunct for 5 years, Eleanor added, repeating what Daniel was telling her on the phone. Samantha stared at the papers scattered across the counter. These are fake. All of this is fake. Fake documents, fake company, fake sale, Eleanor confirmed. The only real thing here is the crime Leo just committed by forging my signature on legal documents. Leo finally seemed to grasp the full seriousness of his situation. Eleanor, wait. We can work this out. I made a mistake. You made several mistakes, she corrected him. You committed fraud. You forged my signature. You attempted to steal property worth over $500,000, and you did it all while lying to both me and her about your intentions. Samantha was backing toward the door, her earlier confidence completely gone. I didn't know, she said quickly. He told me he owned this place. I thought it was all legal. Did you put any money into this supposed purchase? Eleanor asked. Her silence was a clear answer. She had invested in this fantasy, likely contributing to what she thought was a down payment or closing costs. Money that had likely gone straight into Leo's pocket. Eleanor looked at both of them, her soon-to-be ex-husband and his accomplice in grand theft. Here is what is going to happen. You are both going to leave my house immediately. You are going to take your boxes, your lies, and your fake engagement ring with you. Where are we supposed to go? Samantha demanded, her voice pleading. That's not my problem anymore, Eleanor replied. But I suggest you figure it out quickly because in about 1 hour, I am filing a police report for fraud, forgery, and attempted theft. How long that gives you to disappear depends on how fast you can pack. Leo opened his mouth to argue, but Daniel's voice stopped him cold. Mr. Vance, I strongly recommend you consult with a criminal defense attorney tonight. The true scope of their situation was finally sinking in, and the panic in Leo's eyes told Eleanor he was beginning to understand just how thoroughly he had destroyed his own life. Leo's desperation kicked in as the reality of his situation crystallized. Eleanor, please don't do this. We've been married 18 years. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. Fix this. Eleanor couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of the idea. Leo, you forged my signature to steal my house. You've been planning this for months. You got engaged to another woman while we were still married. Exactly which part of this do you think can be fixed? Samantha had gone silent, but Eleanor could see her mind working. She was calculating her own exposure, wondering if she could be charged as an accomplice. A smart woman, just one who had gotten mixed up with someone as careless as Leo. The documents, Leo said suddenly, lunging toward the counter. If we destroy them, there's no proof. Daniel, Eleanor said into her phone. Please tell them about the copies. Daniel's voice was firm. We photographed everything when you called. Plus, the attempted sale was recorded with the county recorder's office this morning. There's a paper trail that can't be erased, Mr. Vance. Leo slumped against the kitchen island, finally understanding that his scheme had not just failed, it had created a mountain of evidence of his crimes. How did you know? How did you figure it out so fast? I didn't figure it out, Leo. I prevented it. 2 years ago, after your cryptocurrency disaster, I transferred this house to my business. I have been protecting myself from exactly this scenario since your third major financial screw-up. The truth hit him like a physical blow. You've been planning this. You've been waiting for me to. I've been protecting myself from your poor decisions, Eleanor corrected him. I never imagined you'd actually try to steal from me. I thought even you had limits. Samantha finally spoke up, her voice small. The money I gave you for the down payment, where is it? Leo's silence answered her question, and her face flushed with anger. You spent it, didn't you? It's gone. I can pay you back, Leo said quickly. With what money? Samantha demanded. You don't have a job. You don't own anything. You just committed a felony that's going to follow you for the rest of your life. I watched as Samantha's fury solidified into a cold resolve. She strode over to the counter and picked up the fake purchase agreements. You know, Eleanor, she said, holding the papers aloft. You might want these for your police report. You can use this as evidence for what a complete fool he is. With that, she ripped the papers in half and then again, letting the torn pieces flutter onto Leo's head as she walked past him. Without another word, she was out the front door, slamming it so hard the windows rattled. Leo was left standing alone, a mess of paper confetti covering him like a parody of a celebration, his life completely undone by the very lies he had built. As I heard the vehicle pull away, just moments later, Leo's demeanor shifted completely. The smugness he had displayed earlier was gone, replaced by a desperate plea. He confessed that his girlfriend was correct. He had nothing left. The money she had provided him was gone, spent on an engagement ring and down payments for their shared apartment. If you report this to the police, I'll be sent to prison, he pleaded. I replied with a quiet certainty. That is the usual consequence for committing serious crimes. Eleanor, I am begging you. Do not ruin my life over this, he implored. I looked at my husband of 18 years. This was a man who had just tried to take everything I had worked for, yet all I felt was a profound sense of pity for him. Leo, I told him, you ruined your own life. I am simply making sure you don't ruin mine in the process. The conversation was interrupted by Daniel's voice. Eleanor, the police are asking if you'd like to file charges tonight or if you prefer to wait until the morning. My gaze swept across the living room, taking in the numerous boxes filled with things that did not belong, and then rested on the man who had betrayed me in the most profound way. Tonight, Daniel. I'll be at the station within 1 hour. Leo's expression collapsed as he grasped that I would not be saving him from the repercussions of his actions. For the first time in our marriage, he was going to face the full weight of his decisions, and I was finally going to be free. I drove to the police station with a sense of peace that had been absent from my life for years. At the station, Detective Jenkins listened to my statement while Daniel provided the legal documents proving my ownership of the house and the fraudulent nature of Leo's attempted sale. This is a very clear-cut case of fraud, Detective Jenkins stated, examining the forged documents. A fake signature, a made-up buyer, and an attempted theft of property valued at more than $500,000. This qualifies as a Class B felony. What kind of sentence does that carry? I asked. Between 5 and 10 years, depending on his previous record, and if he cooperates, she explained. My thoughts went back to Leo's long history of financial failures, none of which had been criminal, but all of which demonstrated his terrible judgment. He doesn't have a criminal record, but this isn't the first time he's made a disastrously bad choice, I said. Daniel presented a thick folder of documents. We also have proof of the conspiracy, including the fake company registration and the counterfeit identification used to create the fraudulent buyer. His girlfriend had been involved in at least some of the planning. In less than 2 hours, I had filed a detailed police report and started the process that would most likely result in my husband being sent to prison. I felt no sense of satisfaction, only relief that the threat to my financial well-being was being neutralized. As I drove home, I saw Leo's car parked at an all-night diner near the highway. I could see him through the window, hunched over a cup of coffee, probably trying to figure out what his next move would be. He had his phone pressed to his ear, likely calling lawyers, family members, or anyone who might help him navigate the catastrophe he had brought upon himself. I did not stop. That part of my life was over. Back at the house, I walked through the rooms, gathering the belongings Leo and his girlfriend Samantha had left behind. Most of it was worthless. Cheap jewelry, old electronics, and clothing from discount stores. I put everything in a bag and placed it by the front door. The next day, I would have the locks changed. That night, I would begin planning my new life. The following weeks were a blur of legal proceedings and paperwork. Leo did hire a criminal defense lawyer, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. Daniel kept me updated on the case's progress, while I concentrated on rebuilding my life. The strangest thing was how quickly I adjusted to being alone. After 18 years of marriage, I felt more at peace within a week of Leo's arrest than I had in years. There was no more worrying about where money was disappearing to. There were no more sudden financial crises. No more walking on eggshells around someone whose next scheme could destroy everything I had built. My business flourished without the distraction of Leo's chaos. In the month after his arrest, I closed 3 major deals, including a warehouse complex that earned me a 6-figure commission. For the first time in years, I was able to focus entirely on my work without worrying about what new disaster Leo might create while I was in meetings. It turned out that Samantha had cooperated fully with the police investigation in exchange for immunity. She provided evidence of Leo's planning process, including text messages where he had boasted about finally getting what he deserved from our marriage. Her cooperation sealed his fate. The divorce proceedings were incredibly simple. Leo had no assets to claim, no legitimate complaints to make, and a pending felony conviction that made him eager to avoid any further legal trouble. I kept the house, the business, and my retirement accounts. He kept his freedom until sentencing, which was scheduled for another 2 months. I celebrated by redecorating the house exactly as I had always wanted. I chose clean lines, modern furniture, and absolutely no compromises with someone else's horrible taste. Every room now reflected my choices, my preferences, and my vision for what a home should feel like. For the first time in my adult life, I was living entirely for myself. It was an exhilarating feeling. Looking back on those tumultuous weeks, I came to realize that Leo's betrayal had given me the most incredible gift imaginable, complete freedom from his chaos, and the opportunity to build a life based entirely on my own choices and achievements. Sometimes, the most effective revenge is simply to refuse to let someone else's destruction touch your own meticulously constructed world.